There's a mountain town in West Virginia where a house costs less than a used car. Not a fixer-upper fantasy, not an abandoned shell, a real place with streets, neighbors, and homes selling for prices that feel like a mistake. And yet, it's not the only one. Scattered across the country are mountain towns where the cost of buying in seems almost too low to believe. The places we're about to show you aren't myths. They're overlooked pockets of America where the numbers don't match the expectations, where homeownership feels less like a long-term goal and more like a decision you could make this year. Subscribe right now, because these are the kinds of prices that make you rethink what's actually possible. Let's get right into it. There is a smokestack in Anaconda, Montana that stands taller than the Washington Monument. It does not pump anything anymore. It just stands there on the edge of town, 385 feet of brick, a monument to the industry that built this place and eventually left it. The Anaconda Copper Mining Company once ran the largest copper smelter in the world right here. At its peak, this town employed thousands of workers, produced enormous wealth, and sat at the center of one of the most powerful industrial operations in American history. Then it closed, and Anaconda became what a lot of mountain towns become when the industry walks out. Quiet, affordable, and completely overlooked. The median home price in Anaconda today sits at roughly $269,000. That number might not sound dramatic until you consider that the Montana statewide median is pushing toward $500,000. You are buying into big sky country at roughly half the price everyone else is paying, and Anaconda does not shortchange you on the scenery. The Anaconda Range looms over the town. The Pintler Scenic Highway runs nearby. Warm Springs Creek cuts through the valley. You are not in some flat, featureless corner of Montana. You are in the mountains, surrounded by the full visual drama of the Northern Rockies, paying less per square foot than people in Missoula or Bozeman are paying for a studio apartment. What nobody tells you is Montana has no state sales tax. Every dollar you save on a house here goes further because everything you buy here costs less than it would in most other states. No sales tax on groceries, no sales tax on clothing. You move to Anaconda, you buy a house at half the state median, and then you enjoy a lower cost of living on top of it. Here is the weird part. Anaconda is not struggling the way you might expect a former industrial town to struggle. The community has reinvented itself around tourism, outdoor recreation, and the kind of slow, deliberate lifestyle that urban burnout victims pay thousands of dollars to experience on a retreat weekend. The Old Works Golf Course, built on the former smelter site using slag from the copper operation as a base, is considered one of the most unique golf courses in America. The stack itself is a state park. History is not a wound here. It is a landmark. Picture this. You're driving into Anaconda for the first time. The mountains are in front of you. The sky is that particular Montana blue that does not look real until you are standing under it. And on the horizon, that impossible smokestack. You pull up to a 4-bedroom house on a residential street. The listing price is $220,000. You think something must be wrong. You call the realtor. Nothing is wrong. That is just what houses cost here. The smokestack is still standing. So is the opportunity. And if Montana at half price sounds good, the next town on this list is in a mountain setting that belongs on a postcard, at a price that belongs in a different decade. Butte sits directly on the Continental Divide. Let that land for a moment. The line that separates waters flowing to the Pacific from waters flowing to the Atlantic runs right through this town. You can stand in Butte and be, quite literally, on the spine of the continent. The Rocky Mountains are not a backdrop here. They are the address. And yet Butte has a median home price of around $268,000 in a state where the median is nearly twice that. Like Anaconda, Butte was built on mining, copper, silver, gold. At one point in the late 1800s, Butte was the largest city between Chicago and San Francisco. It was called the richest hill on earth. The wealth that flowed out of this ground funded mansions, opera houses, and political machines that shaped the entire country. Then the mines scaled back, the population contracted, the economy shifted, and the housing prices never caught back up to where the rest of Montana eventually went. What you are left with is a city of about 30,000 people, sitting at over 5,000 30,000 feet of elevation, surrounded by mountains, with a downtown that still has the bones of its boomtown past. Victorian architecture, historic neighborhoods, a genuinely fascinating industrial history that includes the Berkeley Pit, an open copper mine so deep and so full of acidic water it has become a super fun site, and somehow also a tourist attraction. Butte is not a polished mountain resort. It is something rarer. It is an authentic mountain city with all the beauty of its geography and none of the inflated price tag that beauty normally commands. Here is the government angle. The federal Superfund designation on the Berkeley Pit, while addressing an environmental legacy, has contributed to Butte being overlooked by developers and investors who might otherwise have driven prices up. Environmental remediation is ongoing. The contaminated area is contained and away from residential neighborhoods, but the stigma has kept speculative buyers out, which has kept prices accessible for regular people who just want to live in the mountains without going broke. What nobody tells you is Butte's housing market is starting to move. Remote workers discovered it. A community that once felt isolated now has fiber internet and a growing creative class that has moved in precisely because it is not Bozeman. Not yet. The window is open. It is not going to stay open indefinitely. And if Butte proves that Montana mountain living does not have to come with a resort price tag, the next town proves the same thing in a mountain range most people never think about. Most people, when you say Arkansas, do not think mountains. They think flat, they think delta, they think of a state they drive through on the way somewhere else. That is a mistake that has kept Hot Springs affordable for longer than it probably deserves to be. Hot Springs sits in the Ouachita Mountains, a range that runs east to west through Arkansas and Oklahoma and predates the Rockies in geological age. The mountains here are not as dramatic as the Rockies, but they are green, layered, and beautiful in a way that hits differently than the Rocky Peaks further west. And in the middle of this landscape sits Hot Springs, a city with a national park literally running through its downtown. Hot Springs National Park, established in 1832 as the first federally protected land in American history, is not on the edge of town. It is the town. The famous Bathhouse Row sits right on the main street. The thermal springs that give the city its name have been flowing for visitors for nearly 2 centuries. The median home price in Hot Springs sits at around $235,000. According to Redfin, that is approximately 53% below the national median. You are not buying a shack in the woods. You are buying into a city of about 38,000 people with real infrastructure, a functioning economy built around tourism and retirement, and a national park as a neighbor. Lake Hamilton and Lake Catherine are minutes away. The Ouachita National Forest is on the doorstep, and the price of admission is less than half what a comparable property would cost you in Asheville, North Carolina, or Sedona, Arizona. 2 mountain towns with similar scenic appeal and very different price tags. What nobody tells you is Hot Springs has a long history as a destination for people escaping somewhere else. In the early 20th century, it was a resort town for the wealthy and a haven for organized crime figures who found the city's tolerant local government convenient. Al Capone had a suite at the Arlington Hotel. The horses still run at Oaklawn Racing Casino Resort. There is a Vegas-adjacent energy here that you do not expect in the middle of the Ouachita Mountains. Here is the twist. Because Hot Springs draws retirees, tourists, and second home buyers, the lower end of the housing market has stayed genuinely accessible for local buyers and people relocating from higher cost areas. A retiree moving from Chicago can buy a house with a lake view for $220,000 and still have money left over from the sale of their Illinois property. That story is playing out in Hot Springs right now every single month. Picture this. You wake up in a house you bought for $190,000. The Ouachita Mountains are outside your bedroom window. It is still early, so you drive 5 minutes downtown, walk past the historic bathhouses, and watch the sun come up over Hot Springs National Park, the park that has been here since 1832, the park that is technically your front yard. Then you go home and pay your mortgage. It is under $800 a month. That is not a fantasy. That is a Tuesday in Hot Springs. And if you think Hot Springs was impressive, the next town takes things even further, because deeper in the mountains, prices drop again to levels that honestly start to feel unreal. If you want to understand how affordable Mountain City is, consider this. Tennessee's statewide median home price is pushing toward $400,000. The median home price in Mountain City sits somewhere between $167,000 and $250,000, depending on which data source you use and which month you check. Either way, you are talking about a mountain town in the Blue Ridge that costs less than half of what the rest of the state is charging. Mountain City is the county seat of Johnson County, tucked into the far northeastern corner of Tennessee, right up against the Virginia border. The Appalachian Mountains here are ancient, rounded, and draped in forest that turns extraordinary shades of red and gold every October. The town itself has a population of around 2,500 people. It is small, it is quiet, it is the kind of place where the word community still means something, where people know their neighbors and the grocery store checkout line doubles as a social event. What nobody tells you is Mountain City sits within striking distance of some of the best outdoor recreation in the eastern United States. The South Holston Lake is nearby. The Cherokee National Forest surrounds the region. Damascus, Virginia, the town called the friendliest town on the Appalachian Trail, is less than 20 miles away. The Virginia Creeper Trail, one of the most popular rail trails in the country, is accessible from here. You are not moving to the middle of nowhere. You are moving to the middle of everywhere that matters to people who love the outdoors. Here is the weird part. Johnson County, where Mountain City sits, is consistently ranked among the least populated and least economically active counties in Tennessee. That sounds like a negative. For a housing buyer, it is a feature. Low economic pressure means low housing pressure. Low housing pressure means the prices that were reasonable 10 years ago are still reasonable today. The same forces that make economists frown at Johnson County are the forces that make its housing market accessible to someone who wants mountain living without a mountain price. Can we talk about the view for a second? From certain elevations around Mountain City on a clear day, you can see into 3 states, Tennessee, Virginia, and North Carolina. You are standing in one state and looking into 2 others. That is the kind of geography that normally commands a premium. Here, it is just what happens when you step outside. And if Mountain City shows what affordability looks like in Tennessee's mountains, the next town shows what it looks like in North Carolina's most famous range, at a price that should not be possible given what that range is famous for. The Great Smoky Mountains National Park is the most visited national park in the United States. More people go there every year than go to Yellowstone, Yosemite, and the Grand Canyon combined. 50 times a year, that park welcomes 10 million visitors. And on the southern edge of that park, in the mountains of western North Carolina, sits Bryson City, a town where you can buy a house for somewhere between $223,000 and $300,000. Let that sink in. The most visited national park in the country, right there, on your doorstep, and the price of living next to it is still below the national median. This is not because Bryson City is undesirable. It is because it is small, tucked away, and consistently overlooked by the kind of mass media attention that drives housing prices in places like Asheville, which is also in the North Carolina mountains but costs nearly twice as much. Bryson City sits in Swain County at the confluence of the Tuckasegee and Oconaluftee rivers. The Nantahala River, one of the most famous whitewater rivers in the eastern United States, is minutes away. The Great Smoky Mountains Railroad, a heritage railway that runs scenic excursions through the mountains, departs from the middle of downtown. The town has a main street with restaurants, shops, and the kind of walkable, small-town energy that urban planners spend millions trying to recreate artificially in new developments. What nobody tells you is Bryson City's housing market has 2 distinct layers. There is the vacation rental layer, where investors buy properties to put on Airbnb and drive prices up at the top end. And then there is the local residential layer, where actual houses in actual neighborhoods for actual permanent residents are still available at prices that reflect the underlying market rather than the tourist premium. Finding the right layer matters. A good local realtor will show you both. You want the second one? Here is the government angle. Swain County is one of the more economically challenged counties in North Carolina. That economic pressure keeps the local residential market anchored to what local wages can support. The irony is that the county's economic struggles are partly a legacy of the national park itself. When the government acquired the land to create the Smokies in the 1930s, it removed Swain County land from the tax base and displaced communities. A long-running dispute over a promised compensatory highway known as the Road to Nowhere has never been fully resolved. History creates complexity here. Complexity that has, incidentally, kept housing prices honest. Picture this. It is a Saturday morning in October. The Smokies are on fire with fall color. You walk out of a house you bought for $240,000. You drive 10 minutes to the park entrance. You are hiking in the most visited national park in America before 9 o'clock in the morning. Then you come home to your mountain house that you own for $240,000 next to the most visited national park in the country. Living beside the most visited national park in the US is impressive, but what if I told you there's a nearby town with the same jaw-dropping scenery for a fraction of the cost? There is a town in the Ozark Mountains of Arkansas where the streets are so narrow and steep that cars can only go one direction on some of them, where Victorian buildings cling to hillsides, where an entire historic downtown is listed on the National Register of Historic Places, where artists, musicians, and writers have been coming for decades because it is beautiful and weird and creatively alive in a way that does not fit any easy category. That town is Eureka Springs, and in the local residential housing market, you can buy in for somewhere between $150,000 and $235,000. Eureka Springs is one of those towns that seems like it should not exist where it does. The Ozarks are not the Rockies. They are older, lower, more forested, and less famous. But they are mountains, real ones. And Eureka Springs sits in them like a secret. The natural springs that give the town its name drew health tourists in the late 1800s. Hotels went up, churches went up, a trolley system wound through the hills. Artists arrived, then more artists, then the kind of people who follow artists. And somewhere in all of that accumulation, Eureka Springs became one of the most distinctive small towns in the American South. What nobody tells you is Eureka Springs has a split personality in its housing market. On one side, you have vacation rentals and boutique properties aimed at the tourism economy, where prices run high and inventory is tight. On the other side, you have ordinary residential neighborhoods where local people actually live and where the price of a home reflects what a school teacher or a shop owner can afford. The entry level of this market is real. We are talking about genuine single-family homes in livable condition, not fixer-uppers requiring structural work, available under $200,000. The key is knowing which side of the market you are looking at. Here is the weird part. Eureka Springs draws about 1 million visitors a year to a town of under 2,000 permanent residents. That is roughly 500 tourists for every resident. The entire local economy runs on the tourism infrastructure. But precisely because the permanent population is so small, and because the local economy has always been oriented toward visitors rather than residential growth, the housing stock for actual residents has remained anchored to what local wages support. The tourist money flows through. It does not always stick to the housing market. Can we talk about the location for a second? Eureka Springs is in Carroll County, Arkansas. It is about an hour from Fayetteville, home of the University of Arkansas. It is close to Table Rock Lake. Beaver Lake is even closer. The Buffalo National River, the first national river designated in the United States, is within reach. You are in the Ozark Mountains, which means you have forest, water, geology, and terrain in every direction. And the town itself has galleries, live music venues, the annual Eureka Springs Blues Festival, and a historic hotel scene that gives the place a life beyond just outdoor recreation. Picture this. You are walking down Spring Street in Eureka Springs on a weekday afternoon. The Victorian storefronts are slightly crooked on their hillside foundations. A musician is playing something on a porch. The light is coming through the trees at that particular late afternoon angle that makes everything look like a painting. You own a house 3 streets over. You paid $180,000 for it. The mortgage payment is under $800 a month. You moved here from Austin, Texas, where that same money would get you a parking space. You are not going back. Eureka Springs feels like a secret tucked into the Ozarks, but it's not the only place where beauty and affordability collide. Not even close. Logan, West Virginia is Hatfield and McCoy country. The famous feud between those two families play out in the mountains and hollows of this region in the decades after the Civil War. Shootings, ambushes, court battles, political intrigue. The whole thing reads like an American myth, partly because it became one. Tourists come here now specifically because of that history. They ride ATV trails through the same mountains where those families fought, and they do it affordably because Logan's housing market has stayed in a place that the rest of America left behind a long time ago. The median home price in Logan County sits at around $130,000 to $143,000. Logan City proper shows some listings running slightly higher, but the countywide picture is clear. This is Appalachian pricing in the truest sense of that phrase. You are not being asked to pay for someone else's idea of what a mountain town should cost. You are being asked to pay for what a house in Logan actually costs. What nobody tells you is the Hatfield-McCoy Trail System, which runs through Logan County among other counties, is now one of the premier ATV and off-road riding destinations in the United States. 600 miles of trail, multiple trail systems, enough terrain to keep a dedicated rider busy for years. The economy built around this trail system has brought hotels, outfitters, and visitors to parts of West Virginia that had no other economic engine after coal. It has not driven housing prices through the roof, but it has given Logan County a future that does not depend entirely on the past. Here is the government angle. West Virginia as a whole has leaned heavily into outdoor recreation as an economic development strategy over the past decade. State investment in trail development, grant programs for tourism infrastructure, and active marketing of the Hatfield-McCoy trails have all helped stabilize communities like Logan without pricing out the people who actually live there. The strategy is working slowly, housing prices are still low, the trails are still there, and the window for getting in at current prices is still open, but it is not going to be open forever. Can we talk about the geography for a second? Logan sits in the Guyandotte River Valley, surrounded by forested ridgelines that rise sharply in every direction. This is not gently rolling hill country. This is Appalachian topography in full force, steep, wooded, dramatic, and beautiful in a way that photographs cannot fully capture. You drive into Logan and the mountains close around you like a door. It is an enclosed, protected, deeply specific kind of place. The kind of place that gets into people. The kind of place people from Logan never quite stop calling home even after they leave. Logan is raw and deeply rooted in Appalachian history, but the next town takes that same mountain backdrop and pairs it with something completely different. Bluefield, West Virginia, calls itself nature's air-conditioned city. That is not a metaphor. The town sits at an elevation high enough that temperatures that would be brutal on the Virginia coastal plain feel genuinely comfortable here. And for decades, the city had an unofficial tradition of giving out free lemonade on any day when the temperature reached 90 degrees Fahrenheit. That day almost never comes. Because Bluefield is in the mountains, where the air is cooler, the summers are shorter. And apparently the lemonade budget rarely gets tested. The median home price in Bluefield is approximately $107,000 to $129,000. The cost of living here runs about 17% below the national average. You are in the Appalachian Mountains on the West Virginia-Virginia border in a city with a population of around 9,000 people paying for a house what most Americans pay for a car. Not a luxury car. A car. What nobody tells you is Bluefield once had a completely different economic identity. Coal and railroad money made this city prosperous enough to build a downtown with architecture that would look at home in a much larger city. The Mercer Healing Arts Center, the East River Mountain Overlook, the proximity to outdoor trails and state parks. The bones of a city that was built for more than it currently contains. That gap between the infrastructure and the population is exactly where the affordable housing opportunity lives. Here is the weird part. Bluefield, Virginia sits immediately adjacent to Bluefield, West Virginia on the other side of the state line. Two towns, same name, different states, sharing the same geography and the same slow economic story. Together, the two Bluefields form a small metro area with resources and amenities that dwarf what you would expect from a town with such low housing prices. There is a hospital, there is a college, there are restaurants and shops, and a functioning civic life. It is not a ghost town, it is a city that the housing market has temporarily forgotten AB out. Picture this. It is July, 95 degrees in Charlotte, 101 in Atlanta. You step outside your front door in Bluefield and it is 78 degrees. There is a breeze. The mountains are green. You paid $115,000 for the house behind you. The mortgage on a 30-year fixed at current rates is under $600 a month. Somewhere across the country, someone is paying $3,000 a month for an apartment with a view of a parking garage. You are living the arithmetic of that comparison. Every single month, Bluefield gives you cooler summers and a cost of living that feels almost out of place in today's America. But somehow, it still gets more surprising from here. 8 miles. That is the distance between downtown Beckley, West Virginia, and the entrance to New River Gorge National Park and Preserve. 8 miles separates a town where you can buy a house for under $120,000 from a national park where people travel from across the country and around the world to whitewater raft, rock climb, zip line, and hike some of the most dramatic river gorge scenery on the eastern seaboard. Business Insider once ranked Beckley as the least expensive place to live in the entire United States. The Zillow Home Value Index for Beckley sits at around $108,000. Redfin median sales data runs somewhat higher, around $155,000 depending on timing. Either way, you are dealing with numbers that make the national median look like a different planet, and the national park is 8 miles away. Beckley sits at an elevation of 2,400 feet in the Appalachian coal fields of southern West Virginia. It has a population of around 16,000 people. It has real hospitals. It has real schools. It has shopping and restaurants and the kind of infrastructure that makes day-to-day life functional. It is not a tiny hamlet sustained by 2 gas stations and a dollar store. It is a legitimate small city that happens to have some of the lowest housing prices in America. What nobody tells you is Beckley was built on coal money and has been managing the decline of coal for decades. That economic transition has been painful in many ways, but it has also created one of the most interesting housing markets in the country, a city with genuine amenities and genuine history, sitting next to a newly designated national park with housing prices that reflect the old economy rather than the new one. The arbitrage between what Beckley offers and what it charges is enormous, and remote workers have started to figure that out. Here is the government angle. New River Gorge was upgraded from a national river to a national park and preserve in December 2020. That designation change was significant. National parks attract a different and larger category of visitor than national rivers. The economic impact of that designation on communities within the park's orbit is only beginning to be felt. Beckley is within that orbit. The town has invested in outdoor recreation infrastructure, trail connections, and tourism marketing. The ground is shifting. The prices have not fully reflected that shift yet. They will. Can we talk about what it means to own a house 8 miles from a national park for $120,000? Moab, Utah is next to Arches National Park. The median home price in Moab is over $600,000. Springdale, Utah is the gateway town for Zion National Park. Median home prices there exceed $700,000. Jackson, Wyoming, for Grand Teton, over $1.2 million. Beckley is 8 miles from New River Gorge, and the median is $120,000. That gap is not a mistake. It is a window that closes a little more every year as the park draws more visitors and more people figure out what we are telling you right now. Picture this. You are sitting on the porch of a house you bought for $115,000. Your mortgage payment is under $550 a month. You finish your coffee, get in the car, and 8 minutes later, you're parking at a trailhead in New River Gorge National Park. The gorge drops over 1,000 feet below you. The New River, which is actually one of the oldest rivers in North America despite its name, cuts through the bottom of it. A hawk is riding a thermal over the rim. You are not on vacation, you are home. And if Beckley is number 2 on this list, you need to ask yourself what kind of number 1 we are building toward. The answer is a town where the houses are so cheap they have appeared on lists of most affordable places to live in America for years. A town where the numbers are so low that first-time buyers sometimes assume there is a mistake in the listing. There is no mistake. Beckley is where the gap between value and price becomes impossible to ignore. But it's not the widest gap on this list. Here it is, the number that makes people stop scrolling and start doing math. Welch, West Virginia is the county seat of McDowell County, in the southernmost part of the state, deep in the Appalachian Mountains near the Virginia border. The median home sale price in Welch and McDowell County sits somewhere between $41,000 and $75,000. Documented recent sales on Redfin show individual homes selling for $13,000, $22,000, $35,000, not as distressed short sales or auction properties, as ordinary residential real estate transactions. $13,000 for a house in a mountain town. Let that number exist in your mind for a moment. $13,000. That is less than most people spend on a car. That is within reach of a credit card limit. That is the kind of number that makes everything you thought you knew about the American housing market feel like it needs to be recalibrated. McDowell County was once one of the wealthiest counties in the United States. Hard to believe now, but the coal that ran out of these mountains in the early 20th century generated fortunes that funded grand buildings, prosperous businesses, and a railroad infrastructure that connected this remote corner of Appalachia to the rest of the country. Welch had department stores. Welch had hotels. Welch had the kind of downtown that signaled a city going somewhere. Then the coal industry mechanized. Then it declined. Then it nearly disappeared. The population of McDowell County fell from approximately 100,000 in the 1950s to under 18,000 today, and the housing prices fell with it. What nobody tells you is that population decline, while devastating for the communities it left behind, created the inverse of the housing crisis that plagues most of America. Where most cities have too many buyers and too few houses, McDowell County has too many houses and too few buyers. The supply of available housing is not the problem. The problem is demand, and that means anyone who wants to move here and generate demand has extraordinary leverage. Here is the geography. McDowell County is in the mountains, real mountains, the kind with ridgelines that run for miles and hollows that go quiet in a way that cities never do. Flows Creek, Tug Fork, and a dozen other waterways run through the county. The landscape is genuinely beautiful. It is not a wasteland. It is not an environmental catastrophe visible from the road. It is green, wooded, steep-sided Appalachian terrain that would be considered stunning if it were attached to a more fashionable address. Here is the government angle. West Virginia has implemented a number of incentive programs aimed at reversing population decline in counties like McDowell. The Ascend WV program has offered remote workers cash payments and community support to relocate to West Virginia. Federal Appalachian Regional Commission funds have flowed into infrastructure projects. There is genuine policy attention on reversing the demographic collapse. None of this has yet moved the needle dramatically on housing prices, which is, for a buyer, still good news. The intervention is coming. The prices have not caught up yet. Here is the honest part, because this list would be incomplete without it. Welch and McDowell County face real challenges. Poverty rates are high. Economic opportunity is limited for people without remote income. Healthcare infrastructure, while existent, is under pressure. The demographic collapse left behind an older population with fewer of the services that younger families want. This is not a town where you move and immediately find a thriving job market waiting for you. This is a town where you move with a plan, a remote job, a small business idea, a retirement income, some source of economic stability that you bring with you rather than expect to find there. But here is what you do find there: a house, a real house, in the Appalachian Mountains of West Virginia for a price that most Americans cannot process as being real. A community of people who stayed because this place means something to them. A landscape that has been doing what it does for millions of years and has no plans to stop. And a cost of entry so low that the risk calculation is completely different from anywhere else on this list. What nobody tells you is Welch is not a cautionary tale about what happens when an economy fails. It is a case study in what gets left behind when capital moves on and people forget to look. The mountains did not leave. The rivers did not leave. The landscape did not leave. The houses did not leave. The price just dropped so far that everyone assumed something must be wrong. Sometimes something being wrong is the thing that makes it right for a specific kind of buyer with a specific kind of playpen. Picture this. You are standing on a porch in Welch, West Virginia. The Appalachian Mountains are in every direction. A creek you can actually hear is running somewhere below. The air is cool even in August because you are at elevation in one of the oldest mountain ranges on Earth, and you own this house. You paid $45,000 for it. Your mortgage payment, if you even have one, is under $250 a month. Every single month for as long as you live here. There are 10 million people in the United States paying more than that for a parking spot, and here you are in the mountains of West Virginia. Virginia, with a deed and a view and a monthly payment that barely registers in a budget. That is what this list is about, not just the numbers. Though the numbers are extraordinary, it is about the gap between what these places cost and what they contain, between the price of entry and the value of the life on the other side of that door. The mountains were here before the coal industry arrived. They were here while it boomed. They were here when it left. They will be here long after the real estate market finally catches up to what they are worth. The question is whether you are here too when that happens. If this video changed the way you think about what a house can cost and where it can sit, hit that like button. Subscribe, because we are not done finding the places the housing market forgot. They are out there, in the mountains, in the valleys, in the towns that the economy passed through and left behind, and every one of them has a door that is still open.